Hello, welcome to this short painting video. What I've done is I've just taped a small piece of paper to the board. It's actually half of A4, it's a piece of A4 paper folded in half and taped to the board. I just want to do a small snow scene, but I normally start with a little sketch. So I'm going to bring some land down sloping towards this left hand side. I'll pop a tree maybe somewhere in there when I do the painting. This is just really to give me sort of a layout, a structure for the main scene. I probably need some background bushes, and this is, as you can see, it's a very rough sketch, just giving me an idea of what I might want to paint. They would be slightly shaded, which is fine, just to shade them in a little. And then what I want to do, I want to introduce something that guides the viewer's eye into the painting. So I'll put a bit of a path, and this path will of course become a lot wider as it comes forward and curves round. I need to balance up this tree on this side now with maybe some sort of a couple of posts, or maybe even a couple of branches growing out, a couple of rocks or something in there, in and amongst this snowy foreground. I'm going to put the light from this left hand side, so I'll have quite long shadows if I pop something in there as well. Maybe a couple of posts just guiding the eye along this road. Now I've got the main sort of structure. The tree would be quite dark against a pale background. I think I'll put some interesting shading into the sky. Okay, so I've got a basic structure now of what I want to do. I may introduce something else just in here, just to fill the void, and possibly also in here. So I've got the main structure of what I want. This path would come right forward. So there we go, quick sketch ready to start painting. I'm going to just paint it almost monochromatic. I should probably just use a very pale colour in the sky and quite darks in the foreground, just to give us a snowy scene. Okay, that's the sketch done, ready to start doing the painting. We're ready to paint. I've just put a piece of 15 by 11 Saunders Waterford £140 watercolour paper on the board. I'm working vertical because it's easier to film, and on my palette I've got Prussian blue, a Payne's grey, and I've got a Windsor yellow, and they're the only three colours I'm going to use. I'll use very little of the blue, but I do want the background to sort of fall back, so I will add some of that excuse me, into the sky. The first thing I'm going to do with is very pale blue and create this sky shape. It's just a block of colour, and if we look at the sketch, it runs down from the right hand side. So I'm going to create a background shape before I start to add any significant colour to this. The reason I want to do this is to make sure I've got this nice slope coming from the right hand side down to where this tree is going to be placed. So I'm just adding a little bit of blue to the Payne's grey to create a nice sort of darkish cool sky, and then I'm going to add lots of water and allow that to merge and run down the paper, and that gives me a lovely soft finish in the sky. There's very little blue in there, there's just a touch, and the reason for that is it allows the sky to go back in the picture. The warm colours, or sorry, the warmer colours will be in the foreground and the richer colours will be in the foreground. Just adding a touch of snowy sort of cloud formations up there, and then I will add some more water just to bring that down to the horizon. What I may do, I've just decided, is just add a little bit of colour in there. So I'm going to use a tiny touch of the Windsor yellow, just very watered. It's very pale colour, and what I want to do is create this pale colour and then just touch a little bit into the sky in places, just to add some interest into that distant sky down towards the bottom part of the sky near the horizon. Okay, so I've got some nice runs and colours and merging of the blue into the yellow there, not quite creating horrible green in the sky, but I'm okay with that. What I want to do now is create something, while it's still wet, something of these distant trees just behind the horizon. So I'm going to use a grey with a touch of blue, and that will give me a nice cool colour to add into this horizon. And it's very pale, and I'm just creating sort of tall and sort of tree and bush shapes onto this horizon line. It does look quite a strong colour, but what will happen is as it dries it'll pale, and that's what I want. And I do want this line the horizon line to be quite strong in colour in the background. So it highlights the snow area in the foreground. So I've got those bushes in, maybe one or two taller ones, just to add a little bit more interest on this right hand side, which will balance up the tree that I'm going to put on the left hand side. Okay, so we're just about there, just strengthening the colour a little now with some Payne's grey and blue again, and I'm just going to a couple of smaller bushes, and they'll appear to be in front of those in the distant horizon. Because this is a stronger, darker colour, it will appear as if these bushes are in front of the ones behind. As you can see, it's just added a little bit more depth into that woodland that we can see in the distance. Okay, I'm okay with that, and now I need to just let that dry before I do the foreground. Okay, the background's not quite dry, but it's almost dry. It allows me to do the foreground anyway, because I'm working on dry paper. What I'm doing is just touching in some very sort of medium strength blue-grey colour, which is a mix of the Prussian blue and Payne's grey. And because the background, the sky's got a little bit of yellow in places, I'm just going to touch in a little bit of yellow, and I'm just trying to create a pathway that leads to this tree that I'm going to put in later. So this, if you remember, is a path coming down from this side up into the painting and round towards a tree. It just gives the opportunity for us to guide the viewer into the painting. Again, a little bit more of a yellow colour in there. You can see this is very, very pale colour. When I do add a strong colour like that, I just dip the brush in water and use the water to thin out the paint and stretch the colour. Now I've got the path sort of identified, it comes right in and around here. What I want to do is just strengthen a little bit on the edge of the path, so that it gives an even better impression that there is a path leading into this painting, and it comes in and around from that sort of area and goes up towards a tree. So I've now identified, I think, quite clearly where the path goes in this sort of snowy foreground. What I want to do now, just with a very wet brush and just taking some of that colour that I've put on and just touching into it each side with a damp brush, allows me to just put some interest in the path as well. So I've now got some undulation in the snow and a clear line going towards the distance. What I want to do is just strengthen a little bit in places, just so there's a little bit more interest where there's some undulation in the snow itself, and you'll see shadow. So I'm just strengthening a little bit, and with a very wet brush allowing it to run and do its own thing on the paper. If you brush too much, it does look a little contrived and doesn't quite work for me. So I'm just making sure I've got a little bit more yellow in places, just to bring out the sky a little bit more. And that's the foreground just about done. You can see the water starting to stretch up into this area where the paint was not quite dry. That's fine, it creates some lovely cauliflowers in that area which look like sort of white bushes. If you just take a wet brush and touch in places, you'll see later when this has moved into this paint and created some lovely white topped trees that weren't there before. So I'm just putting a wet brush, just dabbing a wet brush into a damp area, and that will create some lovely white bushes in there as well. I'm just going to strengthen up the edge of the path and then just wait for it to dry a little, just in places, and that's just again identifying the precise line of this path that's now buried beneath the snow. Just touching in a little bit more dark in places and then allowing that to settle. Okay, need to let that dry. The painting's dry now. What I want to do is add a tree to this left hand side. I'm just going to use a very thin rigger brush. It's a number 2, and I'm going to use quite a strong colour to start with, and it's just Payne's grey with a touch of the blue, just to blue it off a little bit. But it is quite a strong mix. As you can see, I'm developing quite a strong blend in the palette, ready to start adding to the paper. Now, using this very thin brush, you can actually get quite a thick line. If you lean on the paper and come up and gradually come off, then you get a very thin point. So I've started flat and then worked my way out towards the vertical, and the same here, just starting in and then coming out quite thin on the tips. More paint and just keep going until this tree is quite well formed. Interestingly, I've got no branches on the left hand side at the moment, so I'm just going to run a nice chunky one out towards the left, and you can see this stroke is gradually just leaning in, and if I get this nice rugged sort of ragged edge to this, I'm okay with that. I quite like it. So I'm going to add some more now to this tree, some more branches, same technique, lean in and then pull out and just put some nice long thin branches right up to the top of the painting, adding more strength to the paint. In some places we'll give it a little bit of extra depth and feel, which is quite nice. So I've got a nice full tree in the position that I want it now. What I want to do, I'm just going to take a very damp piece of scrunched tissue. It's very wet, and I'm just going to touch the tree in places and allow some of that paint to spread, and it just adds a little bit of extra interest. You can put some also down in and around the main trunk, and it just adds a little bit of interest into the top and around the ends of the tree. There we go. So I've got a nice winter tree. I'm just going to take the same damp tissue, a clean part of it, and just take some of this out just to give me, there we go. So I've got a lot of interest around the tree now where I've just used a damp tissue. That's the tree finished. I just need to let that dry before I do any more in that area, but I can work in this area now. So I want to use the same rigger brush and the same blue, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit of yellow. So I've got a real dark green in places, and I'm just going to add a few bits of maybe tufts of grass and some water just to root that in, and I'm adding interest now to this right hand side to balance up the tree on the left hand side. I'm probably going to put a bit of a fence in there and maybe a big chunky one in this foreground, which exaggerates the depth of the painting again and again. Maybe put something on the top of those posts. There's something just leading the eye into the painting, getting smaller and thinner off into the distance. I'll probably add a little bit of a rock or something in there now. I'm just using a very dark colour just to put in a couple of rocks, adding interest again to this side. These will be in the shadow. I'm just taking a damp brush now and just touching the bottom of those with a damp brush, allow it to move. It's just added something to this side which balances the tree. On the left hand side I would like something there, but not too much, because I've already got the tree. So I'm going to put a nice big post and then a couple getting smaller as I go off into the distance, and maybe a horizontal post joins. I'm just sweeping off into the distance and around by the tree. As I've gone into the distance, I've been very rugged with it. It's very non-uniform. What I want to do now is finish the painting with a few shadows. I might add a bit more detail, I don't know yet, but I'm just using quite a strong paint now with a touch of the blue, and I'm just going to decide that the sun's coming from this side, so my shadows are going to go down the hill and along the path, and as they go into the distance obviously they get quite short and less prominent. I also want some shadows from the posts on the right hand side, so I'm just going to run a couple of shadows along that right hand side in sort of the same direction as the ones this side, and we're just about finished. I think it just needs a little bit of something else over here, so again I'm just going to take a few bits and maybe put a small couple of young trees on that side. So there we are, a very simple painting. Let's have a quick look around it. There's the finished painting. As you can see, it's quite attractive. It's got a nice soft sky. What I've done is just changed a little bit. I've added 3 birds using an indelible felt pen. I've also strengthened up a little bit the tree on the right hand side and added a few branches to the tall tree on the left and a few grasses in the foreground. It's quite attractive the way the pathway leads the eye into the painting, and also enhanced by the the fence either side of the path. Hope you enjoyed the demonstration. Why not have a go and get in touch, let me know how you get on. Please have a look at my other paintings, there's quite a few more on YouTube, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.